So this is faster than that desktop running on battery. Hello, I have two laptops here, two MacBook Pros, one of which has been my, let's just use the cliche, daily driver for the past year. It's the top spec M3 Max 16-inch MacBook Pro, complete with a very greasy keyboard, as they tend to get. Oh, look at that. Some scuffs. So when Apple unveiled the new 2024 MacBook Pros with the M4 series, well, let's just say I was very excited because I use this thing every single day. And so here we are with essentially just the new version of it. It's the top spec model with the M4 Max, 128 gigs of unified memory, 4 terabytes of storage, so not quite the top spec because you can get 8 terabytes, and also a Nano-Texture screen. Immediately you can see the difference. So along with this new Nano-Texture option, the headline upgrades with the new MacBooks include the new M4 series of chips, a slightly longer battery life, Apple claims up to 24 hours, coming up from 22 previously. They've also unlocked the SDR screen brightness from 600 to 1000 nits, although only when you're in bright ambient lighting. There's a new 12 megapixel webcam, which also now gets the iPad's follow you around center stage feature. The 3 USB-C ports also now support Thunderbolt 5, although only if you spec an M4 Pro or Max chip. And of course, we have Apple Intelligence, although technically even my 4-year-old MacBook Air M1 will support it as well. So I'm not sure if Apple Intelligence is really a reason to upgrade, but we'll come back to this. Now I'm calling this video my real-world review as I roll back on my chair because this is my real-world desk. I spend far too much time, an unhealthy amount of time, sat right here, usually in the dark of winter, which it now is in the UK. Look how dark it is outside. This is what we have now for the next 6 months. Anyway, I sit down here, I plug in my laptop, which in this case is the new M4 Max MacBook Pro 16, into my monitor. Now I've had a couple of different monitors over the years. Obviously I've had ultra wides for the longest time. I then switched to the Apple Studio display, which I have one right down there. But right now my favorite is this ROG 32 something 4K OLED 240 Hz monitor. Although by the USB-C connection I can only get 120 Hz from here, but still better than the 60 Hz that you get on the Studio display. Hopefully we'll see a refresh of Apple's Studio monitors in not too long, because with the upgrade to Thunderbolt 5 on the M4 Pro and Max, and also the Mac Mini with the M4 Pro, it unlocks a higher bandwidth. You're going from 40 gigabits per second up to 80. It can dynamically boost up to 120. So you could actually potentially get 2 8K 120 screens or 3 4K 144s via one Thunderbolt 5 port, which is nuts. Although you will then need a Thunderbolt 5 hub. But look how small that thing is. And I've also got the Mac Studio here, which is a giant compared to the new Mac Mini. So make sure you subscribe and stay tuned for my Mac Mini review. All that is to say, this is my office, this is my studio, and I can tell you right off the bat that I do not, to any extent, fully utilize the power of a top spec MacBook. I don't this year, I didn't the year before, or the year before that, because I spend most of my time in Premiere Pro, which I know a lot of people are saying, well, why are you using Adobe? If you're on a Mac, surely Final Cut is more optimized. Yes, it is. If your workflow is ProRes and you know how to edit in Final Cut and are comfortable with that, then that's probably a better option. In fact, most people are suggesting I switch to DaVinci Studio, which I might do. But for now, I spend most of my time in Premiere Pro, and it plays flawlessly. I can have multiple streams of my 4K 60 10-bit footage playing back with absolutely no lag whatsoever. In fact, this is the edit for the very video that you're watching right now. I can have Blender running, I can play my 4K video, I could stream or game in the background, and it will barely break a sweat, especially if you opt for the higher end M4 Pro or Max chip and also spec more memory. The problem is, these laptops have been very good for quite a while now. Since Apple made the transition from Intel to their own Apple Silicon with the M1 series 3 or 4-ish years ago, there hasn't really been a compelling reason to upgrade. Which on the flip side means we're actually getting really good value out of these because they're lasting us 3, 4, 5 years. And speaking of 5 years, let me introduce this video's sponsor, Sex, because sex sells. and also buy stuff. They are proudly increasing their warranty to a full 5 years for peace of mind on second-hand tech purchases. So just like with the long-lasting M1 chip, you can have your gaming and mobile tech protected to last just as long. Now Cex, aka CEX, is the well-known buy and sell tech specialist retailer with over 600 stores in 11 countries, buying, selling, trading in all manner of tech and games consoles and gadgets. And I've used Cex plenty of times in the UK over the years, both online and in store, where they have been fantastic. Reasonable prices, great customer service, and reliable tech that now has an industry-leading warranty, so you know that the phone or the laptop, the games console, whatever it is you're buying from them is reliable and well tested, as it's backed up by their 5-year warranty. Reloved with confidence, you might say. And it's kind of funny to think in 5 years' time from now, we may actually see a PlayStation 6 on their shelves or online that you can buy. So go and have some great Cex, and I'll drop a link in the description below if you fancy checking it out. The only actual aesthetic change this year is the fact that they have discontinued Space Gray, and so now you have either silver or Space Black across the whole lineup. Those are your only choices. So rest in peace, Space Gray. You did a great job. We've got the same HDMI 2.1 port, we've got the full-size fast SD card reader, 3 Thunderbolt ports, now Thunderbolt 5 if you spec the Pro or the Max chip, which, as I say, has a much higher bandwidth for high-resolution, high-refresh monitors, for connecting more accessories, for faster charging, and then also we've got the 3.5mm headphone jack and the MagSafe 3 port, and it's also quite nice to see that you get a braided, color-matched charging cable in the box. The most obvious visual difference if you go for a new MacBook Pro is if you spec the Nano-Texture options. The first time we've had this since 2010. I think the MacBook Pro 15 and 17 back then had an anti-glare matte display option, but here we are 14 years later. So this is the standard glass, which you can still get, but for £150 extra, same in dollars, you can get your shiny new MacBook Pro with this Nano-Texture screen. And look at the difference. Holy moly. And I have to say, this mattified Nano-Texture screen where you have these micro etchings in the screen which helps disperse glare and light and reduce reflections is fantastic. It is 100% worth the money. Sometimes if you're looking really off angle at the screen with a bright light on it, then you will see a little bit of a brightness and contrast drop off, but it's nowhere near as bad as I thought it might be going for a matte panel. Because bear in mind, these are still mini LED screens, they're not OLED, but generally what you find with putting a matte film on or a matte display is that you lose some of those inky blacks, you lose some of that rich contrast. And while that is the case a little bit, it is not bad at all. And especially if you're using your laptops outside or in an office with bright lights above you, for my money, yes, is an easy recommendation of Nano-Texture. Speaking of the brightness, because Apple has also unlocked the brightness of the screen from 600 nits to 1000 nits in SDR. Although, like your phone, this brightness boost for SDR only kicks in when the ambient light around you is very bright, like you're using it outside in sunshine. Otherwise, it still tops out at around 600 nits, and you can't manually force it any higher, unless of course you use an app like Vivid, which unlocks the full HDR brightness, which does drain your battery faster, but I still use Vivid all the time. Now with that out of the way, I've made you wait long enough, let's get into some of the numbers and talk about just how fast this laptop is. Going from the 16-core CPU, 40-core GPU of last year's M3 Max to the 16-core CPU, 40-core GPU of this year's M4 Max, both with 128 gigs of unified memory. In Geekbench and Cinebench, which measure the processor performance, we're getting 22 to 25% boost there year on year. But even better, just this last week, I've built a whole new PC gaming rig with the latest Intel 285K Core Ultra processor. That's their flagship desktop chip. In single core, Intel's chip is 24% slower. It is 12% faster in the Cinebench multi-core, but I think that's probably down to the fact that it's in a desktop PC with 11 fans, and this is running in a laptop, and also gives you the same performance on battery life. Genuinely mind-blowing how good these chips are in a laptop form factor. Switching over to the GPU, the graphics portion of those two benchmarks, we're looking at a 20% boost year on year. And in Geekbench AI, which is just one kind of simplistic way of testing AI performance, but we're looking at between 20 and 50% higher scores. Then in the Blender benchmark, which is very graphics intensive, we're looking at a 20% uptick, and in my real-world test to render 500 frames of a scene, the new guy is 11% quicker. Puget Bench is also a really good test of real-world performance in creative apps, and we're talking 19, 27, 15% upticks. And then in my real-world test of exporting a Premiere Pro project, the M4 Max was 15% quicker. But I have saved the best till last, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I've been able to incorporate the M1 Max, M2 Max, M3 Max, and the new M4 Max because every other benchmark has new versions or it runs differently, so the results can't be compared. You can see the progression over the last 4 years. So the full range of performance coming from the M3 Max to the M4 Max is, well, between 10 and 50%. But in terms of the more consistent results I'm seeing, it's about 25% faster, 20-25% faster, which is significant, but certainly not enough to upgrade from an already very powerful M3 Max. But if you're coming from an M1 Max or earlier, or maybe an M2 Pro, could be worth it. But there is one downside. Now, both of these guys are running in high performance mode, which gives you better sustained performance because the fans can whir up more, provide better cooling and therefore better performance, particularly for sustained demanding tasks. But it does mean they get louder. Now, subjectively, just simply to my ears, the M4 Max is noticeably louder. With my laser thermometer, let's have a look at temperatures. So starting with the M3 Max, could go there. We're looking at a peak of 35.6 degrees Celsius versus 36.6. But what about on the inside? Well, looking at the average CPU temp here, they're both idling around 40 degrees Celsius-ish, but then when we fire up the multi-core Cinebench benchmark, they both very quickly ramp up to over 100 degrees Celsius, then the fans kick in and they come back down. And they seem to settle with the M4 Max around 4 to 5 degrees Celsius hotter than the M3 Max. So a touch hotter, but not too significant. What is more significant if we jump over to the power tab is that the M4 Max under load is using around 20 watts more total system power. So the new chip is based on more efficient architecture, but it's also running at a higher clock speed and it's using more power. Although bear in mind, this is running with the high performance mode. So it is a little bit louder and a little bit hotter. But what about Apple Intelligence? Because Apple's making a big song and dance that these new MacBooks are built for Apple Intelligence, but the slight problem with that is that it's supported all the way back to an M1 MacBook Air. Anything with an M1 in the iPads or MacBooks supports Apple Intelligence, and there will be some slight performance differences, but the same features as they're rolled out. And that's the other problem. It's been such a slow, weird rollout between tablets, phones, and laptops that finally here with macOS Sequoia 15.1 and then 15.2, we're finally seeing some of these Apple Intelligence features, like the writing tools. And one of my favorite is being able to summarize and rewrite things within the Notes app and Pages and Mail, which is obviously mostly Apple's own application. But for me, taking notes in a briefing or college or a student or in the office, being able to take all your notes and then summarize it, rewrite it, change the tone of it, it can be really useful. And of course, we've also got the new supercharged Siri, which still more often than not just shows me some web pages I might like, but every now and then it does show its smarts. Although quite quickly it forgets the context of the question and it still doesn't have any contextual awareness of what's happening on screen. You're also limited to US English. It will be expanded to British English and some other versions in December, with more languages early next year. But it's just all a bit of a higgledy-piggledy mess in terms of what features exist on the software that you're using, whether it's supported where you live in your language, and also reminding yourself to use them, and the fact that they're primarily within Apple's own ecosystem for now. And of course, we already have a lot of these kind of things through Google's AI or through ChatGPT, which I use a lot. I've got a shortcut on my browser. I'm excited to see where this goes, but I wouldn't rush out and buy a new MacBook for Apple Intelligence, mostly, as I say, because your current MacBook will probably already get it. Hello, this is being shot with the webcam on last year's MacBook Pro 16. Hello, this is now being shot on the M4 Max with its new 12 megapixel webcam, which also supports center stage. And does it look any better? Let me know what you think. I think perhaps my face on the new one is a little bit less noisy, but then I am seeing a bit more noise in the background, particularly on those blackout blinds. It's a minor upgrade at best. More significant is the fact that we now have center stage for the very first time on a MacBook. This, of course, is a feature that you normally associate with an iPad, and because of the new camera, if you want it to, the camera can now follow you as you move around, up or down, in or out of the scene, which is pretty nifty, although for a business call, I would find it a little bit distracting, so I'd probably turn it off. Perhaps it's better if you've got kids coming into the frame or you're FaceTiming with your family. As ever, nothing's perfect. We still don't have Wi-Fi 7, still no touchscreen, still no OLED option, that's rumored for in a couple of years' time, and also still, we get a bit of a greasy keyboard. I've only had this for, well, less than a week, and already my little mucky fingerprints are starting to mark the chassis. It's particularly noticeable in space black. And also remember, this is the 4th year we've had this same design since the M1 series of MacBook Pros. And again, the rumors are that maybe 2026 we may have a full design refresh with an OLED screen. There's nothing wrong with it. It would be nice if it was a little bit lighter and thinner, but I also wouldn't want to trade off any battery life or performance through throttling, so I'm fine with the design, but obviously this isn't new anymore. So which one should you buy? Well, it's a little bit tricky because I don't have all the new models available to test. You've got 14 and 16 inch, you've got M4, M4 Pro, M4 Max. But to put the pricing into context, the new MacBook Pros start, so that's with the 14-inch base model of the MacBook Pro with the M4, 16 gigs of memory, 512 storage, at a not unreasonable $1599. That's the same in pounds or dollars, and we have to give Apple some credit for finally catching up with its Windows rivals and giving us 16 gigabytes of their memory as standard rather than 8. However, if you want a bigger 16-inch MacBook Pro, then you're going to have to pay an extra £900. Now this does get you the M4 Pro chip and 24 gigs of memory, but $24.99 for the cheapest 16-inch is a tougher sell. And then be prepared to drop another grand on top if you want the base M4 Max chip. And certainly the M4 Pro and the Max chips are definitely designed for high-end creative industry uses. And if you don't think you can take advantage of that, or you're buying this out of your own pocket and not on the company or the business, then stick with the base M4 Pro or just the base MacBook Pro, and probably the 14-inch as well. I do like the 16, but most of the time I'm sat here at my desk with a bigger monitor anyway. But the bottom line is, a very good laptop has got even better. It is expensive, but right now I don't think there's a better laptop, unless you want to play games, than a MacBook Pro. But what do you reckon? Are you going to be buying one of these, or perhaps one of these? $599 the Mac Mini with the M4 starts from. I think that's nuts. If you did find this video useful, a cheeky like and subscribe would be fantastic, and I'll see you next time right here on the Tech Chat.